is John, Hudson Maxim School Property Redevelopment.
Yes.
Oh boy.
So
Yeah.
I did submit to all the board members a market study that was done by a consultant, and it was paid for through a Highlands grant. And basically the intent of that report was to have a professional identify what is the best use and most marketable use for that piece of property, so that it could basically be a tool that could be provided to developers and just to give some guidance to people of what may be a workable project for that piece of property. They have identified one option as being all residential, another option as being mixed use. For the mixed use, they actually came up with a basic concept plan to show how that mixed use would be constructed. It does, although they write it up as being 3 stories, it does have the appearance of 3 to 4 stories structure, and it also, if we're going to have an intense use on that property, they're showing a parking deck. So when we look back our initial intent was to have this report done as just as a guidance tool for developers to look at and get do their own analysis to see what would work for them, what would be a good business plan, so that they can ultimately come to us with what their proposal would be, so we can review that and then ultimately rezone this area to accommodate a development that makes sense. We did have a bit of a curveball that the Board of Education just recently provided to us regarding a deed restriction on that property regarding commercial uses. And Bill can go into that with a little bit more detail and what that involves. But the intent is just to start a discussion with the board on that market study and their general thoughts regarding how we do proceed with rezoning that piece of property. Our thought is to try to even provide a basic outline to potential purchasers, what the board might be amenable to accepting. For example, we can discuss 3 or 4 stories, or even 2 stories if the board feels that only 2 stories is appropriate there. But start to have that discussion, so we can develop some preliminary guidelines that at least give some developers some indication of how the board would look favorable on those. And I can share my screen and just kind of look at, let's see. So this is a type of table that we would generate. Is basically, like this is similar to what we have in the form-based code. We have a mixed-use district and basically identifying the principal uses, accessory uses. We typically would identify parking demands and some bulk requirements. And so, like I said, one of the key things we're looking at is the building height, and looking at, I think, 3 stories would probably be more practical in this location, consistent with some of the buildings a Green Tree already did. So it's not, asking for too much. 4 stories may be a complete turnoff to the board, and so we can discuss that. But, when you look at the property being a school, and with the demolition costs and other costs that they're going to incur in order to redevelop that, and any developer, if we truly have an expectation of that site being redeveloped, there is going to have to be several pretty intense use there in order to them to recoup, make it a viable project. Looking at the residential standards, same thing. The only thing with the residential is, we're looking at very high density. This is actually a typo. I didn't mean to say 50, but we're in that range. It's a very intense unit that we would have on this property in order to make it viable. Any kind of high density is going to require a parking deck. The cost of a parking deck and the cost of all this, it just, that's just one thing. So we just need to, start the discussion, not looking for ultimately, approvals from the board at this time, but I just think it's something that the board should start discussing, start coming up with some guidelines so that, we don't want someone to invest time and money into the project only to find out that, what they're proposing is completely off what our visions are.
Right. And, at the last meeting, we decided to reach out to the superintendent of schools and suggest that we work with the school board in marketing the place, the property. And Mr. Schindler, who has been working with them, indicated that he thought they'd not been marketing it very well at all. And subsequently, Mayor Francis had a meeting with the superintendent of schools. So, Mayor Francis, do you want to jump in at this point?
Sure. And what we assured the school is that we're probably more interested in selling that and having that school change hands than the Board of Ed is, simply because schools that are no longer schools have a bad habit of laying around empty for extended periods of time. So where we're at with this, especially with now it's an area in need of redevelopment, the first thing in its favor is of course it's eligible for tax abatements. Secondly, a $10,000 market study was done on that the school didn't use the first time they tried to market the building. So my suggestion would be is they work with a real estate agency. There's a lot of them that do large sites, and let them utilize that market study as potential possibilities. And I think what we really need to look at as a land use board is minimum maximum. We talk about density. I don't get hung up on numbers. Say, for example, we say the unit should be 800 square feet minimum, whatever that is, whether it's housing or commercial. So we could say that. We could say also that, that building is really built into the side of the hill. So we could say, look, a 4-story building there would not look like a 4-story building except in the front of it. We could talk about parking. We could say, well, the road in front of that school was used primarily as a parking lot when the school was there, really. And so maybe we could talk about the potential of making that not a road. So maybe you come down Old Lakeside and you have to make a right and go out that road and not come straight through. So there's a lot of things that we could do, talk about, and really explore if they make sense or not. But first would be to brainstorm what we could do there. Now, I have no problem doing that publicly. So people sometimes will get the wrong impression of what we're doing, but that's too bad if they do that. But it's okay to think out loud and say, look, what's the best way we could bring investors into our town and generate new revenue? And it's certainly not by doing same old. That doesn't work for us, and it never will work for us. So maybe we like 2-story building, but maybe that's not what sells this property. Maybe a 3 or 4-story building sells it. And so maybe it's mixed use that sells it and not. We have to have that flexibility, which I think we can build in if we build in, again, the minimum and maximum. So rather than talk about density by way of how many units, doesn't matter, because the building codes and safety issues will dictate that. If we say, again, the minimum size of the unit is 800 square feet, you can make a very nice 1-bedroom apartment, living unit for that with that size. So, if you nail that down, that takes care of any conversation about density. When it comes to parking, again, we look at not having a problem with a parking deck, and we can say out loud when we're all said and done, we don't have a problem with a parking deck in the back where the old playground was. You could put but parking decks, although the price has gone down, can be very expensive per parking space. Used to be really high. It's probably in the past 5 years have been cut in half. But it's still expensive versus parking. So then we talk about extending the parking areas like the street in front of the school. So we can be creative with this. It's just a matter how much work we want to put into it. It's a lot of discussion. It's a lot of creativity. But that's what's going to sell that school. If you're going to go by the standard things that we always do throughout town, and apply the standards that we do today, you'll never sell the school. It's going to cost $500,000 to take it down, give or take, because of the asbestos and the lead, but pretty close to $500,000. Maybe you could do it for a little bit less. It's a couple of acres. So if they sell it for $500,000, so you got $1 million into it, and tell me what property in the borough of Hopatcong sells for $500,000 an acre. And the answer is none. And so that's what we have to be cognizant of if we're trying to help them sell and market their school, so it becomes a benefit to our community and not another problematic area like we might have one or two of them that is not really good for our community. So that's my thoughts on it.
Mr. DiBenedetto show any signs of willingness to have us work with them in marketing?
So Alan, definitely he did. He was very amenable with that. And the Board of Ed is actually in the process of searching for a commercial realtor to help market the building. And one thing that has been asked to us from the land use, because we were giving him this market study, is, the market study has a lot of information in it. It's good if we all agree with the information. If we don't agree with it, then we're sort of just lost leader here, and we're just, teasing people. And the whole idea of our discussion tonight, I'm hoping at least we go in this direction, that we discuss some of the issues of parking, of density, of maybe how many stories, I don't know. And that's up to everyone, because that ultimately is going to give, and it should be done in a public forum. Ultimately, that will give the realtor or the other buyer a little more direction, so they're not shooting off in left field and come in front of us and we say, whoa, no, get out of here. That type of thing, which we still can do, but we're just giving a little guidance.
Right, so
we are competing. We're in competition with other towns, other areas, not only in Sussex County, but close by Morris County. So we have to be aware that we have to make this property attractable for someone to invest in.
Right.
It sounds to me as if we should wait, though, until they find a commercial real estate agent, and then have that agent come in and sit down and have a frank discussion with that agent, so that he or she can market the place.
I think too, we need to show them the other market survey that we had done by the Seton Hall. We just a year ago had Seton Hall come in and do a market survey of the entire area. And it was loud and clear from that survey. People wanted to get to that lake, be able to use it, walk it, get access to it, go to the park, whatever that was highly recommended in that survey. I think that realtor needs to see that as well.
We can give them that. That's a great idea, Ron. And overall, hopefully that'll sell the area. But the whole point of this,
you got to start from someplace.
You got to start from somewhere, but we still need to discuss this specific property.
Set the boundaries. Set the boundaries on what we think would be digestible to us. Just set them. Minimum, maximum. Keep it fundamental. Doesn't matter what goes there. It matters the density and the actual configuration of the architecture are probably what's going to be fundamental, basic issues for us. So we can do that anytime we want, and in my opinion, the sooner the better.
When you look at the schools that have been repurposed into housing, for instance, they don't do much with the facade. They're not changing the heights. They're redeveloping the inside to make it more amenable to living space. Because you get into structure costs, that markets it right out of its play.
Right.
But I think what Alan said was very true. When a good commercial realtor come in, evaluate it, and then maybe have a preliminary meeting with us to go over the planning of it.
But first, you
Okay,
gotta decide.
so let me ask this question then, which is, I'm for that. That's great. But if the realtor comes in and says, listen, you know, this is a tough property because of, you know, just the area, and there might be demo, or there might be other environmental issues have to be cleaned up. They really are recommending, let's say, 5 stories. Is everyone going to be okay with that and listen to them? Or is it, nah, no way? So that's part of the issue, I think, that we need to discuss, because some people are going to say, no way. Or some people say, I only want 2 stories. And honestly, at 2 stories, I think you speak to any realtor, they're going to say, you know what, this property's dead in the water. Just
No, you
saying.
look at
I don't think we have to hear
Some
that
of the
from them.
discussion.
But, you know, you look over at the Madhouse, and I always thought we get so much opposition from those houses over there. And we did get some. But it's a much bigger structure. The house was built, the structure was built. It seems to have lived there now, and it fits. It looks all right. It looks good. And I think if you went with a higher structure, 3 stories, 4 stories, I don't think 5, but 3 or 4 on top of that hill, I think you'd be fine.
That's
I
what
guess
we
we do.
gotta. That's what we have to anchor. That's exactly what we have to talk about and agree upon. Exactly what you said, Bob. And we
Exactly,
can
Bob.
do that preliminary, so that when I've spoken to site developers and other people that might or might not be interested, and I tell you what, the consensus is that building cannot be reused. Not simply because of the asbestos. The basic construction of it's been added on to 2 or 3 times. The infrastructure itself is poor on its best day, and so we have to. That's the reality. If someone wants to repurpose it as is, I'd be
Mike,
surprised.
you're not going to
but,
be in sales, though. We're going to keep you out of the sales end of it.
but we got to be prepared for each. All right, and the elephant in the room is environmental. I have suggested strongly that the Board of Education minimally do a phase 2 environmental assessment, minimum.
Mm-hmm.
The other issue is the 10,000 gallon oil tank in the ground. That should just come out, because these are anchors on that sale. Those are fundamental roadblocks to getting this building on the market.
Is that something we should bring up, or something that a real estate developer, a commercial real estate person should bring up?
The bank will. I'm telling you, the bank will not fund anything with environmental issues. That's got to be. That's got to be.
Is it our responsibility, though?
No, but it's my.
Albert, it's not our responsibility, but he's bringing it up to have a public discussion about it. Ultimately, the realtor should be telling Art and the school board, hey, these are the high issues that we need to handle. We should leave that up to them, and that realtor who is going to be coaching them and selling it for them. But ultimately,
Al, I would look at us like facilitators. We're kind of facilitating the method here. We're getting our arms around everybody, and we're pointing them in the right direction.
Yep.
Does the liability of that oil tank lie at the school board versus the borough of Hopatcong, though? They're not.
No, it's not school property, Bob. That's
that's
school.
on school property. That's school property.
Okay. Well, that's right. That's where I wanted to be.
So let me throw this question out. We have this market study, and there's obviously all different ways we can go with it. But let's look at page 83. John, I don't know if you want to bring it up, but it has a 3D image of a 4-story building with a parking deck. And I'm not saying it has to be this, but obviously looking at it, there's obviously density involved here, whatever it is, the number, are we as a board okay with something like this? That's all. And not saying, it's locked in stone, we're all voting yes for it. No. But is this something that in the direction we can say, Art, something like this is okay? I don't know what a builder's going to suggest, but it gives a direction. That's all.
Can you show that, John?
Yeah, I'm just looking for it, Mayor. I'll find it in a minute.
Yeah, it's an
It's
interesting.
higher up, but I'm just on 83, page 83. But
15 years ago, 20 years ago, the board would have never gone into what was approved at Green Tree.
Right.
And now saying, okay, if we got $400,000 in tax revenue a year, and we look at a taller building, it impacts the fire department perhaps because of equipment, but that's it. But you're going to bring that revenue in on an annual basis, plus water, plus sewer.
Yeah.
You're going to start making a good revenue about it. So you start to adopt. It's also improving upon and kind of capitalizing that higher structure area in our redevelopment area. So it is very progressively advancing to the right level.
right, and it fits in the redevelopment area in that direction from what John had put forward further on down River Styx in some of the 3D images he put together.
And Lord knows, I got plenty of fire capital right now, so we're good there.
Well, we have that big ladder. Come on, right?
No, we got all kinds of capital. Don't go there. We got plenty of fire capital.
Listen, I've got into that already. And once you exceed a certain height in building, especially in our area, the sprinklers are required. The whole thing is, it's not like you're building a matchstick building. I mean, there's firewalls.
That's relevant. That's all part of the code. So
yes,
it's just a standard building.
Yes,
I do that every day.
Well, then you know what I'm talking about. So that's the least of my worries.
That more comes down to the public's ability to understand it, so they think their fire department can rescue them.
Yeah,
it's perception. Now, just throwing this out there, but that property that's just off to the skew of that at 1 o'clock from the school that leads you to the lake, is there any way to ever tie those two properties together so it enhances the saleability of the Hudson Maxim?
Two different owners, isn't it?
Nothing's impossible. And of course, that's a problematic property. So we might have some opportunities there. It would be a perfect park.
Right. That's what I was thinking. Combine that, giving you lake access.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Access to the lake.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I never say never, and I'm always poking around. But that property is problematic.
It is.
And I'm trying to be.
It's certainly problematic what they're trying to do with it now. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Not problematic.
John, you can go to page 11 also, is a very similar rendering. That's all. It's just something to show people to page 11, drop it down.
Yeah, I got it now. And just for some reason I had the old report, so 60.
Oh, all right. Are you going all the way down? All right.
64, right? Page 64.
84.
84.
83.
Keep going.
I mean, I don't know how many people have it in front of them. That's why I'm saying.
No.
Keep going. Keep going. Here it comes.
The whole mouse is just
Right there.
There you go.
I mean, is this something, and I'm not saying it has to be this exactly, but, this is a 4-story building with a parking deck. Obviously, we should discuss something like this because ultimately, this might be put here or might not if we say no, because it does sit in our hands.
Back in the days before we were a land use board, when it was still zoning and
planning,
I remember Corriega bringing the idea of a parking deck before us.
Really?
On top of the parking area that's out there.
Yeah. But at that time, it was so expensive, it was just not doable.
Right.
I see a whole bunch of ratables in that building, just saying.
Well, I say nothing's really off the table. So let's look at what logical options we have and see if they can get a realtor that has some juice that knows how to sell.
Yeah.
That's really what you need.
So let's ask this question. Is there anyone on the board who would really be against something like this? Please speak up.
I would.
Alan, you would, okay,
Yes, I would.
fine.
And part of the
What-
reason I would is because you got those commercial street level places right down the road that won't even sell.
Well, right, Alan, I agree with you on that. I'm not sure if commercial is going to work here, but what I'm really trying to get is just a concept of a size of a building, 4 stories, possibly with a parking deck, whatever, maybe
Not
we.
talking about that property. Don't.
What, Mike?
In my opinion, that should be part of that should be senior housing. In my opinion, part of that should be senior housing, and it'll be.
I'll tell you,
We're
senior
talking about
housing,
that wall.
senior housing would be great there, and it would sell out in a heartbeat with an elevator.
A lot of possibilities when you have a shell like. So these are not, but these are things that we can give someone the opportunity to do. Now, if you look in front of that building, that parking, or what I was talking about, would be the street. So
Yes.
we can close that street. No one would miss it. It connects to nowhere.
Yeah, I
You
just
don't live near it.
Area.
You don't live near that, do you, Mayor?
Yeah, I do.
Do you?
I actually live there, and I use that street, but for many years that it was one way, I was okay with it. I wouldn't have a problem with it.
What the hell's
But
the
otherwise,
difference?
you know.
You make a right and you go past. You go out the other road there. You know, the old lakeside is not a dead end. It just doesn't have to go straight through.
Yeah, but that's a whole, you know,
That's a whole different game.
The only objection I
Different
have
game.
is the parking deck.
that's a whole different game.
I have no objection to a 4-story building there.
I don't
Okay.
think you'd have a problem. Put the parking deck right across the way where the parking is now.
Well, that's a possibility too, but I'm
Well,
not
that's a
thrilled with
possibility.
that.
Alan, let me ask you this. Alan, let me ask you this. If someone came in and obviously tore down the whole building and they put parking, dug it out and put parking underneath, would you be okay with it?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. That's some direction we have now, that type of stuff. So,
Hey, Rich, are you getting the feeling that that's what the board of Ed wants, is that type of suggestion? And
yes, because ultimately it gives them some direction, specifically the realtor, once they, you know, get it. Because even talking to other commercial realtors are like, this is great, but, you know, we still need some direction. It's nice that we have form-based code and there's nothing locked in stone, but you also don't want to go on a tangent and go in front of the board and then get shot down. You want to have a little guidance. And I think this is what we're trying to do here tonight, create a little guidance.
And
As
with-
in this.
But I find it difficult to create guidance without having someone to talk to, somebody that we can look in the eye and we can say, go ahead and do this.
Well, Alan, ultimately that will happen because we all will get that chance. And if we don't like the plan, we don't like it. I mean, hey, you know, that can be the situation, but at least we're giving them some guidance going, a 4-story isn't out of the question. There's one person, 2 people, maybe they don't like a parking deck, but the others do like the parking deck or whatever. That's what we're trying to get here. But
you can't have this type of density with 4 stories and not have a parking deck. I think that you can't have one without the other. You need to provide parking.
Right, unless something else is created.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
It's 10 o'clock.
Yeah, 3:30 comes early, guys.
Yes, it does.
All right.
All right, we'll continue this discussion. Hopefully we'll get some feelers from some commercial real estate people,
Yeah.
and we
Keep
can
an open
continue
mind.
with them.
Just keep an open mind, and personally, I don't have any rules for it. We have a certain envelope to work in, and as long as it's aesthetically right and engineered safely, I think that it's a blank canvas.
well, we've done good work by putting it in the redevelopment zone. That's an opportunity for people. We made it optimistic for people to look at it in that perspective. So any improvement, they're good to go. And the Lord knows there's plenty of improvement that can happen.
I think the school board coming up with the right commercial development realtor is probably the best step forward, first step.
Sure.
Exactly.
So we have to let them know that they're not going to run into a wall when they approach us. They're going to run into a group of people that are interested in doing what's best for the town and our taxpayers.
In the community, yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that we should be so open that when a realtor has someone or two people that are interested, we should really invite them to a work session. Hey, what do you think? So
Absolutely.
it isn't in just a dead end street or a closet. We're discussing this together.
Right.
You're looking at it you're probably looking at, if this anything happens here, it's going to probably be anywhere from a $10 to $25 million project.
If it goes that way, yeah.
If someone's interested in making that a decent, attractable investment to attract both people and businesses, mostly people.
Right.
And the cost of tearing it down for $500,000 isn't an issue. If you're going to spend $10 million, spending $500,000 to tear it down is not an issue.
And my point is, they have to feel warm and fuzzy with us when they make that commitment.
But
Exactly.
I think one of the things that the mayor said that I think is absolutely critical is somebody's got to do an environmental assessment of this thing. A 10,000 gallon oil tank down there. If there's a problem with that tank, you guys are looking at a problem that's beyond control.
It
Now,
won't happen.
listen, the tank has been tested every year. There's no
It
leak.
has? Okay.
But yes, it has. But
It's a
as
liability.
everyone says, let's get it out of there and make sure there isn't anything else.
Clear.
Yeah.
But that's
There's
still
always-
up to the school.
When you pull those tanks out, that's when you find there was a problem. You could do a lot of testing to pressure test it, but you don't find the problems till you pull it out and see the soil.
Yep,
That's
you're
why
right.
it's got to come out. That's exactly why it's
Gotta
got to
come
come
out.
out.
Just pay attention to the firehouse there across from the municipal building. We're getting ready to do it. So there you go.
Oh, great.
Oh, great.
It's a liability, and liabilities don't sell properties.
And this is what a good example of what the school should do. Just pay attention to the firehouse. We're going to start digging here in the next couple of days. You'll see exactly what needs to happen with that tank.
Yeah.
Well, how many
Yeah.
gallons is that, by the way, Ron, to make a night?
4,000. 4,000.
Oh, so we got 40% of their problem.
Yeah.
Hey, Bob, it's
It's
still
not
an
linear, Bob.
No,
The problem's
no,
not
no.
linear. They're all expensive. I wish it was
got it.
linear. but it's
You got
not.
that right. It's still oil in the ground. I don't care if it's a gallon or 4 gallons. It's still oil in the ground. Don't go there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is not a pleasurable thought.
No, the tank, if you notice, the hard tank's already been set. We set the above ground tank has already been set. We're piping that now, and you're going to see backhoes real soon. We'll show the school how to do it.
All right.
Well,
Well,
I'm glad you put the new tank in first. That's logical.
Thank you. That's why they hired me.
Okay. Just checking on that. That's really scary.
so this is just a kickoff of what our job is to make this, to just keep working on this and get this nailed down so we have a comfort level with it. If we have a comfort level with it within certain parameters, then and when investors come speak to us or approach us in the work session, we've already discussed it, so they could feel comfortable with our ability to be open with this.
The bottom line is it's a positive development approach that we're going to take to it, and hopefully they bring the right people to the board, and then the idea can develop a little bit when you have the right investors, period.
Exactly.
It'll happen.
Yep.
Yep.
All right.
Very good.
Okay.